I didn't open the door to betrayal. It walked in wearing my husband's last name, carrying a single suitcase and a smile that knew exactly how much trouble it was about to cause. The night Elia's younger brother, Cole, arrived, the house exhaled, a quiet, subtle shift that felt like someone had turned the dimmer down on the life I knew and up on something shadowed and strange. He stepped inside with rain on his shoulders, city edges clinging to his frame, and a wary kindness that didn't belong to a stranger, but didn't belong to family either. His gaze met mine for a shade too long, and in that stolen span, I felt the floor tilt, just enough to make standing still feel like a lie. Elias was buoyant, relieved. He'd finally convinced Cole to leave whatever chaos he'd been clinging to in Seattle and reset here for a few months. He dragged him through every room like a tour guide, proud of the paint we'd chosen together, the table we'd sanded by hand, the strawberry vine in the kitchen window that finally decided to bear fruit. Cole listened without interruption and watched me in the reflections, the oven door, the beveled glass, the black screen of the TV, like he wanted to see the parts of me I hid even from myself. At dinner, conversation skittered and settled. Elias told the story of the time Cole broke his wrist skateboarding and refused to admit the pain for 2 days. Cole laughed, but there was an anchoring quiet beneath it, a low current of restraint. When he passed me the salad bowl, his fingers brushed mine, featherlight, accidental in the way that knows exactly how not to be an accident. Heat rose to my throat. I pulled my hand back too fast, clinking fork against plate. Elias didn't notice. He never noticed the quiet things that broke me open. Later, when the dishes were done and the hum of the dishwasher stitched the house into a softer shape, I found Cole in the doorway to the back deck, shoulder against the frame, the sky behind him bruised with weather. "It smells like rain and rosemary," he said, not turning around. "Feels like the kind of night that lets people make decisions they pretend they didn't mean." Something in me flinched. "We don't make decisions like that here," I said. His mouth quirked, something like a smile, something like surrender. "You do," he said, finally looking at me. "You just write them prettier." Sleep came without rest. I lay beside Elias and listened to the unfamiliar heartbeat of a third presence in a familiar house. Somewhere down the hall, a suitcase unzipped, a restless mind paced, and a boundary I'd always assumed was solid began to show its hairline cracks. Days learned the shape of three. Coffee mugs multiplied, towels disappeared and reappeared on strange chairs, and the rhythm of our kitchen changed key. Cole moved quietly, as if careful not to be caught being gentle. He fixed the flicker in the hallway light. He oiled the squeak out of the sliding door. He drank his coffee black and read the paper like he expected the world to confess. The accident started happening with intention. A shoulder grazing mine as we traded places at the sink. A foot brushing mine under the table without apology. A joke that leaned too close to confession, rescued at the last second by his retreating gaze. Elias, exhausted from a project bidding war at work, missed each microtremor, each polished sin. He kissed my temple in passing and called me his constant, and I tried not to flinch as the word hit the soft places that had started to feel restless. "We could hang the frames in the hallway," I offered one afternoon, anything to keep my hands busy. Cole measured in silence, pencil behind his ear, the clean concentration of someone who needed to build something straight because too much else had been crooked. "You're good at this," I said. He pinned the level to the wall. "I'm good at wanting to get it right, even when I don't." He handed me a nail and held it steady while I hammered. Our hands were too close. My heartbeat felt like a mistake I couldn't unmake. That night when Elias worked late, Cole and I ended up in the same room out of all the rooms in the house. The living room, the sofa, the dusk blue hush. A movie glowed unnoticed. He stretched, I did too. The softest point of our ankles met and stayed. We didn't speak. Sometimes silence is the loudest admission. Sometimes not pulling away is the only thing two people can't forgive in themselves. After I stood at the sink with the water running and my hands submerged long after the soap was gone, like cold could blunt want, like noise could drown choice. Cole walked past, paused, and then didn't touch me. The kindness felt like a door I wanted to open anyway. The house knew us. Floorboards developed loyalties. The third step learned to creak when Elias climbed it but held itself together when Cole did. The kettle went quiet when he entered the kitchen. The mirror in the entry caught his reflection before mine, and I hated it for telling me what my face looked like when I watched him. He told me little things, like breadcrumbs dropped by accident. That he'd left the city after a deal went bad because he wouldn't lie about numbers, that he was tired of being the brother with the talent for almost. He hadn't meant to stay with us this long, but the days kept saying, not yet. He said he liked the way the rosemary plant looked like it was praying. I wanted to ask what he prayed for. I didn't. Once, in the laundry room, where heat turned air into confession, he stood too close and didn't pretend it wasn't on purpose. "We're not doing this," I said, folding a shirt that had never felt so heavy. "We're already doing this," he answered, and the truth in it made the room smaller. He reached for a towel and brushed my wrist. That was all. It was enough. Elias came home early that evening, laughter big and uncomplicated, asking about tacos and a show he wanted to watch. Cole stepped back into shadow like he'd always belonged there. I laughed too loudly. The sound clattered against the cabinet and broke. Elias didn't notice. He never noticed the things that didn't ask to be seen. At 2 a.m., I woke to the ice maker resetting and knew it was Cole in the kitchen, standing in the blue light like someone between worlds. I didn't get up. I lay still and counted the seconds between the cubes falling and the fridge sighing, and told myself that wanting is not a sin until it becomes a language. We had learned fluency, E. A thunderstorm gathered with all the patience of someone waiting to be asked. The air went heavy and urgent. Elias texted that the site inspection had gone sideways, he'd be home after midnight. My phone lit up, then the room, then my pulse. Cole stood in the doorway with the storm behind him like a warning sign lit in neon. "Power might go," he said. "We'll be fine," I answered, and my voice made a promise my body didn't keep. We ended up in the kitchen because that's where people go when they want to confess without speaking. He opened a bottle of something brown and honest. "You don't drink whiskey," I said. "I don't do a lot of things I want to," he replied, pouring 2 short glasses, sliding one to me without looking away. We told each other unimportant truths because the important ones were already loud enough. That he hated cilantro, that I used to sing in church choirs, that he learned to change a tire at 9, that I kept a box of letters I'd never mailed. He laughed once, surprised and soft, and the power flickered like the storm had opinions. The house inhaled, the lights failed. We stood in the dark with the rain writing its name on the roof. I could smell his cologne, clean as confession. When he reached, he didn't touch. His hand hovered at my elbow like a question. The room answered for me. A crack of thunder, a glass yawning across the counter, my breath catching in a net I'd woven myself. "Say no," he said, not moving closer, "and I swear I'll leave tomorrow." I opened my mouth to say it. The key turned in the front door. Elias called my name like he always did, clear, unafraid, trusting me to answer. The lights surged back to life. Cole's hand fell to his side like a sentence ending. I set the glass down with care. "Kitchen," I shouted, and the lie tasted like metal. Later, after good night and good enough, I lay beside my husband and listened to the house recover from the storm. 2 doors down, Cole didn't sleep either. The rain stopped. The thunder receded. The yes that hadn't been said didn't make me clean. The morning remade the world with a kind of merciless brightness. Elias left early, kissing my forehead, saying something about permits and promises. I watched his tail lights disappear like a prayer somebody else would have to answer. The house reset, dishwasher, kettle, birds arguing on the fence. Cole's footsteps paused at the laundry room like a record needle hovering over the same dangerous groove. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm practicing," I replied. "Practicing what?" I folded a towel with careful reverence. "Being good." He laughed, one breath, not joy. "Has it ever worked for you?" I looked at him and understood that we were both tired of being versions of ourselves that made other people comfortable. "Sometimes," I said, "not lately." He stepped closer. The room smelled like clean cotton and consequences. "Tell me to go," he murmured, "and I will." I thought of Elias' hands, callous from building, gentle in their certainty. I thought of the way Cole looked at the rosemary plant like it was praying for him. I thought of the storm practicing our mistake for us so we could pretend it wasn't ours. "I can't," I whispered, and hated myself with a clarity that felt like mercy. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch the way movies teach sinners to touch. We stood in a circle of quiet that knew our names. Then the front door slammed with a cheerful finality. Elias, unannounced, early and whole. My heart tripped over its feet. Cole's face closed like a fist. We scattered into our assigned roles. At dinner, Elias lifted my hand to his lips and said, "You're my best decision." I smiled with all my teeth so he wouldn't see the bruise blooming under my ribs. Across the table, Cole chewed his slow penance. When Elias asked him to pass the salt, his hand brushed mine again. This time, the flinch felt like loyalty to the wrong person, and I swallowed it like medicine. That night, in the mirror, I practiced the face of a woman who hadn't almost burned down her life and called it weather. The mirror did not believe me. Days later, after a silence so loud it became its own weather, Cole came to the back steps with a duffel bag and a little box of things he hadn't unpacked, the only things that had been his, even here. Elias had just left for a site walkthrough. The air felt like it does right before a choir chooses the right key. I found a place, Cole said, eyes on the rosemary, not me. Not far, far enough. Running doesn't fix it, I said. Staying doesn't either, he answered. The truth of it sat between us like a chair neither of us would claim. He laughed once, empty of everything except intent. I keep thinking about the night the power went out, he said. About how I didn't move because I wanted to be the kind of man who waited for light. The admission cut me open with kindness. You were, I said. We were. Elia's truck pulled into the drive earlier than either of us expected. The universe apparently had a taste for symmetry. Cole lifted the duffel, squared his shoulders, and softened his mouth like apology could be a posture. Tell him, he said, and I felt the ground tilt again. Tell him what? That you deserve the life you choose, he said, even if it isn't me. Inside, Elias kissed me, placed paperwork on the table, talked about timelines and budgets, broke off to ask if I wanted to finally plant lavender in the front bed. Love, when it is simple, is unafraid of weather. I wanted to set the table with our honesty and eat it in front of him. I wanted to swallow my confession and keep him safe from me. That evening, with the sun kind as forgiveness, I stood in the doorway of Cole's new place, small, clean, windows open like lungs learning. I set the rosemary cutting on his sill. It prays, I said. So do I, he replied, and this time there was nothing practiced about it. He didn't reach for me, I didn't step closer. We had already learned the cost of touching the wrong truth. We didn't say goodbye. We let the quiet do it for us. Later, at home, Elias handed me a packet of lavender seeds, smiling like he had won something he didn't know he was competing for. Let's put them in this weekend, he said. Let's grow something that doesn't run. I looked at his hands, steady, calloused, faithful, and chose to be the woman who planted things and stayed to water them. The door to the past did not close. It learned to stay open without inviting me back in.